Hi, my name is Jenny Lauren Dowden for Conduit News, and today we are honored to have former Arkansas Razorback football player and former prosecuting attorney, as well as a Little Rock business owner, Chris Bequette, joining us. Chris is running for the Lieutenant Governor race for Arkansas. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
My pleasure, Jenny.
Well, first, just tell us what prompted you to join this race.
Jenny, I've lived in Arkansas a number of years, and over the last 8 to 9 years, I've taken stock of how Republicans have been doing since they took control of state government. And I'm very, very unimpressed, very disappointed. To be honest with you, I feel betrayed because what I've seen is I've seen a bunch of Republicans governing like Democrats. I see a bunch of Republicans with R's behind their names out of convenience instead of a deep, abiding conviction in the principles and policies that we Republicans believe in and stand for. And I see wherever I look, with few exceptions, a version of state government that is still the Democrat Party version. And these Republicans that have governed the last 8 to 9 years have utterly failed to put in place the Republican version.
I think that's so interesting, and I agree with you. I think as we've seen with the past session, and then especially with the special session, I think that a lot of Arkansans feel very disappointed in some people at our Capitol right now. Give me your overall impression with what you've seen happen at the Capitol, maybe just this past year.
Well, I mean, when you look at the most recent session, it's a whole bunch of what I would call kind of Mickey Mouse legislation passed. But when you look at what needed to be passed, I mean, let's just tick down those issues real quick. I mean, small and limited government, which is what is in the RPA platform. That's what we're supposed to be, a small and limited government. They've never cut anything from what the Democrats handed off to them 8, 9 years ago. And in fact, they've increased spending since that time by 25%. And again, in this session, did they cut anything in government? Of course not. Just you look at the crime in this state, it's just out of control, crime wave in really the entire state, many of our major cities. And we still have the same soft on crime criminal justice system firmly in place that was the same system I prosecuted under in the 1990s. There's a whole host of issues, and we can go over those in the course of our visit today.
Well, as you know, the Arkansas legislature is expected to come back October 25th to consider tax reform issues. What would you like to see our legislators take up?
I would like to see our legislature abolish the Democrat Party's 1929 state income tax. And the reason I want to see them do that is, number one, we've got 6 states that surround us. 2 of them, Tennessee and Texas, have no state income tax. So if we ever have a chance to compete against those states, we're going to have to get to where they are and have no state income tax. And then think about this: if you get there, which you can if you have political will, political courage, and basically just kind of understanding some basic math. But if you get there, now those other 4 states that are going to still have a state income tax, you're going to kick their tail just like Tennessee and Texas kick ours right now. And but the other thing on that as well, Jenny, is, philosophically, why should we abolish the state income tax? Well, I have a firm belief that what you go out each day and work for is your private property, and we shouldn't be taxing it. I mean, your only choice in not having it taxed is don't work, and that's not an option. And so and think about it in this way also. For many of the prudent, I'm a financial advisor. I own my own financial practice here in Little Rock. For many of the prudent things I advise my clients to do financially: pay off debt, pay off your credit card, student loan, pay off your mortgage, pay off your car loan, save an emergency fund, pay for your kids' college and save for your kids' college. All of those things you can't do unless you're first taxed, because the money to do that comes from the income you earn each day from your toil.
You're right. And I think for Arkansas is one of the most taxed states. Conduit has done many articles about taxes here in Arkansas. But for whatever reason, our conservative leaders, they kind of just push those issues to the side, and they bring social issues to the forefront, which are just as important. And they are more than willing to take a very hard stance on social issues, but they just kind of tiptoe around, tax reform, eliminating the income tax, those types of things. And so that's really all voters are hearing about. And then they're not considering, some people aren't considering the other things. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I've talked in my campaign so far, I've talked about two kinds of Republicans. I've talked about 30% Republicans, and those are the ones that, they beat their chest and they brag and they boast along about, one or two issues, and they're important issues, don't get me wrong, things like abortion and what all, very important issues. But there's more issues than that. And there's another whole 70% of issues that they completely ignore. Like I just mentioned, the size and scope of government currently, crime, the state income tax, education, K through 12, as well as higher education, all kinds of things. Those are the 30% Republicans. And then there's the other kind of Republican I refer to as the Mitch McConnell Republicans. And these are the people that cling to power, look for a paycheck from the taxpayers. They're political animals and they just kind of want to be in the mix, but they never move the needle on the things that mean the most to Arkansans, like those things that I just mentioned: crime, the abolishing the state income tax and putting more in your pocket, and being able to have parental school choice where you determine where the money goes to educate your child. All those kinds of things just have been completely ignored by those 30% Republicans, Mitch McConnell Republicans.
I think so too. At Conduit, we believe in economic freedom. And if you do not have economic freedom, and as the larger that government gets and more money that they have your power. And so as we see, government just continue to become more bloated, we can talk about social issues all that we would like, right? But as long as they have your money, your political and your social, campaigns or whatever, that they're not gonna move the needle, because they have all the power with it, with the economy. So
Jenny, there's a direct correlation that people have to fundamentally understand. The larger the government is, the less liberty you have. The smaller the government is, the more liberty you have. It's just that simple.
I agree. Well, let's talk about crime. You, as we mentioned, you were a former prosecuting attorney. We have seen the statistics, specifically just over the past year, just skyrocket in certain parts of the state, but then even in smaller parts where we really didn't see an issue, we're seeing an issue with crime there as well. Tell us how you would deal with crime in Arkansas, and how it would look differently than what the current landscape is.
Well, I am a crackdown on crime, tough on crime person, being a former prosecutor. And the way I would handle it is again, in a very tough means. Stronger and longer sentences. Currently, if you do commit an aggravated robbery, your sentence is 10 to 40 years or life. Typically, you're going to get, and an aggravated robbery is using a knife or gun or deadly weapon in the course of that robbery. And if you're convicted of that, generally you're going to get a minimum 10-year sentence, and then you're going to generally serve a quarter of that 10 years. So about 2.5 years before the revolving door lets you spit you back out into your community. You're probably not have learned your lesson at that point. I saw that often as a prosecutor, and you're back to doing things that are going to put you back in prison. And I think we need to have a system where, on sentencing, where, hey, especially the violent criminals are serving up to 90% of their sentence. And so stronger, longer sentences. We need more prisons and jail beds. We've got 2 where you live, Jenny, up in Northwest Arkansas. Your Washington County and Benton County sheriffs are talking about expanding their jails. Why? Because there's more crime. I get it. There's more population growth up there, but there's also more crime. A lot of it due, sadly, to illegal alien immigration, illegal alien crime. But I think the biggest thing that I would do is we have some law enforcement agencies that sadly have horrible leadership. The rank and file officers are doing all they can do, but they've got terrible leadership from their chiefs and their top cadre, and also their city leaders that oversee the police force. Pine Bluff and Little Rock specifically are what I'm talking about. And they have what I call failed law enforcement agencies. And so the state of Arkansas has a law dealing with school districts that are failing. If they're failing academically or failing financially, the state can come in, decapitate the school board and the leadership of that school district and take it over and run it. And I think we should have had this law in place long ago for failed law enforcement agencies. And I would say in the case of, say, Little Rock, you come in, you pass that law, the metrics are met that are in the law, that they are indeed failing as a law enforcement agency. The state of Arkansas comes in, decapitates the LRPD leadership, gets new leadership, and on top of that, part of that law would allow the state of Arkansas to commandeer up to half of the budget of the city of Little Rock, so that can be spent to immediately address the crime problems, the horrible crime problems in the city. And the city board and the mayor are completely out of the picture as well.
What are you hearing from citizens when you are traveling right now on the campaign trail?
Well, crime itself is a big issue. On all these issues that I go through and tick off during my standard stump speech, I get a lot of visceral reaction, nods, yells, applause and things like that, because people get it. They are sick and tired of seeing Republicans govern like Democrats. But on the crime issue, was that your specific question as to the crime issue, or?
Well, just in general, it could be that, but just in general, what are you, as you're hitting the campaign trail, what would you say are, your big takeaways that you're hearing from people as you're listening to them?
Again, it's just that these Republicans are governing like Democrats, and they're not doing Republican things. And if they are attempting to do Republican things, it's like what you said earlier about the income tax, and they've cut it a little bit, but they're, it's nibbling around the edges. It's photo op tax cuts, nothing big and bold. They passed something regarding K through 12 education that was kind of a school choice deal, but it was like, it amounted to $2 million and like 200 students. We have 473,000 K through 12 students. It's like a raindrop in the Sahara Desert, and it's great for where that piece of speck of sand, that drop hit the sand, but for the rest of the desert, it did nothing for it. So, I mean, it's laughable of what they've tried to do. It's sad. It's not laughable. It's just disgusting that they haven't accomplished more.
What do you see as the main obstacles moving forward? If we were to try to transition away from the red jersey, Democrat Party style of, conservatism there in Little Rock and at the Capitol, and move it more towards, true conservative values, what obstacles do you see?
Well, what I see, and this is part of my campaign as well, I see myself, Jenny, if I were to be elected lieutenant governor, as the chief accountability officer of the state of Arkansas. And what I mean by that is, hey, we're all Republicans. We all have an R behind our name now running this state, supermajorities in the legislature, all the constitutional offices. I see my job as, if I have to publicly call out the governor or the attorney general or members of the state legislature, I'm ready to do that. And that hasn't been done. Nobody's been doing that. Everybody wants to go along, get along, and sing kumbaya. And I'm sorry, that's not the way it needs to be. People need to be held to account for their votes and for their lack of results. And again, call them out publicly. And then the other part of it, again, I would expend all the political capital I could, Jenny, to go primary a state rep or a state senator if you got to. I know on Twitter today, or rather yesterday, there's a state representative that I called out on Twitter because of some things that I didn't like that he tweeted about, and I was very blunt about it in earnest. So I think that's what has to be done to move the needle. None of this good old boy, circle the wagons. We got to stop with that.
So what do people need to know about your campaign? How can they get plugged in and follow what's happening?
So they can like us, obviously, on Facebook. They can follow on Twitter. And I tweet frequently, and it's me doing it. So, you can tell it's me just kind of by the nature of the personality behind the tweets. But, and they can go to BequetteForArkansas.com, BequetteForArkansas.com, and make a contribution. I mean, obviously, campaigns don't run on nothing. They have to get their message out, have to have resources. And so whatever anyone watching this can contribute, we would be most honored to have that support and help.
We'll certainly be watching this primary race. It's an interesting one, to say the least. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention that we didn't talk about?
I appreciate, Jenny, very much that Conduit has had me on today, and I appreciate all your great work that is sorely underappreciated in this state. But I appreciate all the work that you guys do to bring conservative true Republican values to this state. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you so much, and hope to have you on again soon.